with us this evening. It's been a busy couple weeks. Purim is next week.
Yep.
So we're actually doing a concert, a fundraiser for Ukraine called Standing Up to a Modern Day Haman for Purim this year, because that's what he is.
Yep.
For the world, though, not just the Jews.
Yep.
So, good evening, everyone. All right, I'm going to wait one more minute and then we're going to start and people can trickle in. We'll be happy to have you tonight. This lovely documentary was so uplifting.
Yep.
And I know it's won a lot of awards, right, Tom?
Yes, we hoped for recognition, and it's come. So, and I submitted to, 3 or 4 dozen or so festivals over this 2022 calendar year, and we've been very fortunate to be recognized, from around the globe for this film.
Okay, so let's begin, and people will, come in, and I want to welcome you all to this discussion about this beautiful documentary, Amen, 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 or Amen, 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 right? All different languages. And we have a documentary filmmaker, Tom Gallagher. Welcome, Tom, from Connecticut.
Yes.
And Eli Epstein in New York, who is the visionary, the instigator of this project. And before we start talking about it, I just would like you to tell, Tom, you've been making documentaries. What number documentary is this, and what else have you done?
How about if I start with what I've done? And that is, my history is I'm a lawyer. I worked on Wall Street as a lawyer. I headed a trading desk on a big trading floor. I became a journalist, and I'm happy to report that this is my first documentary.
Wow, it's beautiful. You have a great career ahead of you.
Well, thank you.
And Eli, you're a businessman in New York. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself too?
Absolutely. I am a first-generation American. I am a child of Holocaust survivors. I was born and raised in a world that was rather insulated and isolated from anyone who was not exactly like us, meaning Yiddish-speaking Ashkenazi Jews. And it was my business career that exposed me to the Middle East. I was the CEO of a company that manufactured a petroleum byproduct, and we acquired some assets from British Petroleum, including a contract with a customer in a place we had never heard of called Dubai. That was 33 years ago. And therein starts the journey of my life that changed so many things all around me.
So Tom and Eli, we want to start with what we call the origin story. Like, how did this whole idea of giving a Torah to the Grand Prince, the Crown Prince,
yep,
come about? So I guess Eli would start with that.
Yeah, let's start with Eli, the first mover here.
So I was doing business, as I mentioned, in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. And although I was very apprehensive given my own baggage and background, I became over time more familiar and more comfortable in the UAE, and connected with people despite the fact that they had never met a Jew before, and became more curious about them as they became more curious about me. Eventually, 20 years ago, last month, I introduced the first Israeli political leader to the United Arab Emirates, Dr. Ephraim Sneh, who was then Deputy Defense Minister, and became, as I say, over time, more and more comfortable being who I was, although I was traveling to many other places besides the Middle East. And then I got involved with a few Jews that I found there, and we began the beginning of a small Jewish community. And I gave the first Torah Scroll to that community, not the same Torah that Tom was able to make a documentary about. But it was in the year of 2018 that we heard that the following year, 2019, was declared the year of tolerance by the UAE leadership. And as a result of that, when I realized there was no rabbi included in that process, I thought, what a great idea to perhaps make a contribution that would serve as a reminder and a statement of the Jewish presence in the country.
So you came up with this idea of giving a Torah, but to whom and who helped you put it together? Who helped you finance it? How did you find the scribe? Some of it was made in Israel. I mean, it's a very international Torah.
Right. So it could not have happened without a lot of other people, obviously. To point to two individuals, I spoke with Rabbi Yehuda Sarna, who is the University Chaplain of New York University, NYU, and asked whether he could facilitate a conversation with the then president of NYU, John Sexton. John had and still has a unique relationship with the Crown Prince, His Highness Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed, who was his benefactor as they built the NYU campus in Abu Dhabi. And so at Rabbi Yehuda's request, I wrote a short note that said that the Jewish community would like to make a gesture of our love and appreciation for the ability of the Jewish presence in the country to live in safety and in confidence and in security. And we wanted to make that gesture in the form of a Torah dedicated to the memory of his father, Sheikh Zayed, who founded the country. I did not believe that would work, but since I was asked to write it, I wrote it. And nor did I believe that they would ever make a documentary about it, because that was not my plan either. But John had a relationship with Tom Gallagher, and all that took off immediately thereafter.
So Tom,
and just to tell you, it was my family who gave the Torah. We didn't ask anyone else to help contribute with it.
So your family gave the Torah?
Yes, my wife and I.
Wow, that's beautiful. So that's a big mitzvah. That's the mitzvah, the 65th. The 613th mitzvah. Isn't that considered it?
The last one. That's
the
right.
last one. Okay, so Tom, when did you get involved in this whole thing?
So Eli and Yehuda and John Sexton were having their communications in October, November of 2018. In December of 2018, I was in Abu Dhabi to be on a panel discussion talking about religion and the media. I was a CEO and publisher of a nonprofit news organization that covered religion at the time. And John was also in Abu Dhabi hosting a small group of NYU friends and benefactors and alums. And he invited me to join him after the conference I was attending, which I did. And it was at that gathering in December of 2018 that John shared with me Eli and Yehuda's conversation about gifting a Torah to His Highness, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. And I just intuitively said, we need to make a documentary on that.
Even though you'd never made one?
No, even though I'd never made one. I know how to tell a story. I've never done a script, but in beginning of 2019, we thought the gift ceremony was going to be in the spring. So we started really hustling to get interviews done. The gift presentation was later in November of 2019. So filming began in 2019. John and I agreed to a couple of provisos about the film. One was I needed to have complete editorial control. So the UAE government had no involvement in decision-making on the film. Second, we were not going to take any UAE funding. So the film was funded by individual Jewish philanthropists in the US. And so it was all privately funded. And the other commitment we made was that the film was going to be razor sharp focused on religious pluralism. So we weren't going to get involved in issues, particularly political issues, outside of that topic. And so when people see the film, they'll see that we stayed clearly in that lane. And that was really the point of the film, was religious pluralism through the experience of the Jewish community and this historic gift. And so that was kind of how it came from Eli to John and John to me.
So obviously to us, you're not Jewish. but yet you, did you know what a big deal it is to give a Torah? Did you comprehend what the meaning of it was when you started, or did you learn as you went along?
Well, my instinct immediately was this is a big deal. Just being a person of faith, I'm Irish Catholic. John Sexton's Irish Catholic. Yehuda, Rabbi Sarna likes to point out when we have these public conversations that he was so glad that a Catholic told a story about Jews and Muslims. And so I learned a lot along the way. But importantly, I had to bring in experts to really make sure we kept, we were authentic to each faith tradition. I know when I see films and there are priests presented, I know immediately when something's wrong or it's mispresented. So we were very careful to try to make sure we had a lot of eyes on sensitive parts of the film so that we stay true to those faith traditions. Susan, I think you muted yourself.
Sorry, my phone was ringing. I didn't want you to hear it. Did you want to show a clip now?
Why don't we have 3 clips. They're about 2 minutes each. Why don't we do that now? And I'll take the screen and make that happen.
And this is a clip of?
The beginning of the film.
Beautiful.
That really sets the stage. Here we go.
Can't hear anything.
Can you hear it?
It's not loud enough.
The foremost tribute one can offer in the Jewish tradition is to have a Torah scroll dedicated for a particular purpose. The Jewish community in the UAE proposes the writing and dedication of a Torah scroll in memory of His Highness Sheikh Zayed. The cover of the Torah scroll would bear a dedication in Arabic with the name of Sheikh Zayed. This would be the first Torah dedicated to an Arab ruler in the history of the world.
This is not the Middle East of 15 years ago. This is really a new generation, and they're looking outward, not inward.
The United Arab Emirates is an oasis of tolerance.
In my mind, I thought, which other country could do this? It was obvious to me only the UAE could do it.
It's a gift of Jews of this time, and it's a gift of Jews from all times. The Torah is a story, a code of laws, and an object of desire. If we pull this off, then this becomes the opening scene of the new narrative between Jews and Muslims for the coming centuries.
So interesting. Such a beautiful Torah container. So Eli, you and your family funded the making of the Torah. And how did you get and who are the Jews of the Emirates? And how did they get involved, if they got involved?
Well, of course, their presence was a central part of the story because the gift was given on their behalf. We just facilitated it and put the pieces together, literally and otherwise. The members of the community, which of course has changed over time and more recently has grown rather dramatically, come from all over the world. They're all expats. Of course, there was no indigenous Jewish population in Dubai. They're European, they're American, they're South African, they're Israeli. They speak many different languages. Some of them are Ashkenazic, some are Sephardic, some are professionals, some are business people. So it's a hodgepodge, not very different than what you'd find on Wilshire Boulevard, I think.
Maybe, yeah, you're right. But it's more traditional. It's like modern Orthodox or Orthodox, would you say?
No, actually not. The rabbis tend to be Orthodox. They are actually, all the rabbis have to date been Orthodox, which is not something I'm personally encouraging. But the members are mostly non-Orthodox. In other words, they're Orthodox affiliated, non-Orthodox in practice.
So I have a question for both of you. So how did you approach the Crown Prince? And Tom, how did you get permission to be present for that? How did they let you film the actual giving, the Torah giving ceremony? So first, Eli, how did you reach the prince? What were the channels?
So as I mentioned before, Yehuda Sarna has a close relationship with John Sexton, and John in turn has a even closer relationship, if I may quote that, with His Highness. They are truly really affectionate with each other when they see each other in the most touching of ways. So the note which I wrote, which Yehuda modified somewhat, was read, and I think the scene appears in the documentary, was read by John Sexton to His Highness when they were together. And in a very moving moment that John recounts, His Highness got emotional, and he said he'd be very honored to receive it. And so we went about at that point, getting the Torah written and all the other parts. We had to fly it from Israel to New York because there were then no direct flights. It's important to remember that although we're talking about the year 2019, pre-COVID, but also pre-Abraham Accords.
Yep.
So everything was changed, and there was no official anything at that point. So when Yehuda makes a statement that John just captured in that scene of the first scene of a new chapter, it really was foreshadowing something which none of us anticipated at that moment, just a few months later.
Yes.
So true. Tom?
And then, so because of my relationship with John Sexton, professional, but kind of personal, professional. I'm not an NYU grad, but I interviewed John on one of his books he published, and we'd become instant friends. But John represented to the Crown Prince that this guy Gallagher is going to do an honest job. He's not going to do a hit job. John basically went out on a limb to His Highness and confirmed that I would do an objective job on this topic. I was both a guest of the Torah gift ceremony, but the Crown Prince himself and his staff allowed me to have two professional cameramen in the room. The Crown Prince himself travels with a small camera crew, which captures his official work for archival purposes. And so one of the outcomes of this experience is that this film, and I individually, my little nonprofit production company, we're the only ones in the world who has the footage to that gift ceremony. So that's both a distinguishing point, but also a point of responsibility. And so it was really on John's word that I was able to both have cameras in there and do this film. Now, I had to get permission through all the normal channels. The Abu Dhabi media company, I wanted to use some of their footage. Image Nation Abu Dhabi, I wanted to use some of their footage. I had to get permission from them. It is true that they knew what film I was making. So doors open, but the administrative process of getting written permissions and film and cuts and all that was like anyone else. I was assigned a contact person in the Crown Court to help me navigate the bureaucracy, if you will. And this woman periodically would remind me that His Highness doesn't do documentaries.
Right.
So like what we were embarking on was really a first for the Crown Court or his administrative office.
So this is sort of a side question, but you said this woman was your contact. So what's the role of women there?
I will give you, my view, but Eli can give it in perhaps more detail. But women are, I'll say this not as an expert on the UAE, but my contact was a senior, administrative type, but she had, the authority to navigate the executive authority, they call it, part of the government. In a lot of my day-to-day contacts, at Image Nation, the big production house, were women. I have a number of women in the film, one of whom is an entrepreneur, member of the Jewish community. But I think, women have opportunities both in education and in the government. Many of the government ministers are women. But Eli, what you've been in country for 30 years?
To your question, Rabbi, and I think familiar to most of the audience or participants in this webinar, the role of women in the UAE is very, very similar to the role of women in Israel. And that's a shock to most Westerners and most Jews. There is a central figure in the UAE who plays a very, very powerful and important role, but very much behind the scenes. And her name is Shaykh Fatima. She was the wife of the late founder of the country, Sheikh Zayed. She is the mother of the crown prince and several of the brothers who are now very much involved in the country. She herself is a very, very traditional woman, very modest from a religious point of view. She doesn't even meet with men who are not family members. However, ironically, or I say coincidentally, she is also the single figure that has liberated women in her society and across other parts of Arabia to become full members of society in every aspect. Professional doctors, lawyers, teachers, they're fighter plane pilots as they are in Israel. They're members of the military and the government, and at the same time, either fully embracing religious life and covering their hair, or otherwise dressing in any way they wish to in society with the freedom of expression. And so all people who come to the UAE are somewhat surprised at the atmosphere of complete acceptance and tolerance, but that is not by coincidence, it's by design and the doing of Shaykh Fatima.
Wow, that's impressive. So I want to ask more about that, but now we want to see the Torah ceremony. And Tom's going to share this as his exclusive footage to seeing this, correct?
That's correct. Now, let me just see if I can do this correctly. Your screen. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Clip number 2. So this is the Torah Scroll gift ceremony itself. And it's buffering.
It's okay. Looks like a very modern country.
Yes.
Very wealthy. Okay, we actually, let's see, yesterday we talked to the Israel. Oh, okay. Are we coming? Is it happening?
I'm not sure why it's buffering. Pause it.
Well, we can talk while we're waiting.
Yep.
I mean, I was going to say yesterday we were talking to the Israel ambassador to the Czech Republic, a woman, and we had all kinds of technical difficulties. It's just part of the, I don't know, part of what we have nowadays.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, here, I think it's ready. Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through these clips earlier this evening and they work just fine. So I'm a little perplexed.
All right, well, maybe turn it off and start again.
We can send the link and continue the conversation.
Yeah.
So perhaps, Eli, while this is buffering, you might describe what it was like as a member of the Jewish community to be in the room and to witness the gift ceremony itself, and also Rabbi Abdi's, the Sofer, putting the last letters in the Torah.
Sure, John, thank you. So the dedication itself.
No, that's number 3. Sorry.
Okay. The dedication itself took place in one of the palaces, and at the request of His Highness, we had a small team come. He asked for it to be small because he wanted the intimate environment of being able to greet each member and have a short conversation with each person who is coming for the dedication. And I have to first say that I think we all felt stirred and really inspired when His Highness walked into the room, because he presents himself as a very humble person.
Finally,
so we pause here?
November 25th,
Here it is.
2019, in Abu Dhabi. The Torah Scroll was presented to His Highness Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. The dedication was in honor of his father, the late Sheikh Zayed, founder of the United Arab Emirates.
Your Highness, Your Excellencies, we are here as the children of Abraham to effect a historic moment. A moment which weaves together love, gratitude, respect, and hope. I'm under no illusions that this gift will solve complicated geopolitical problems. What this gift does do is it gives us material for creating a new narrative in the Middle East. We'll begin with the ancient Hebrew blessing recited upon meeting a sovereign. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shenatan michvodo lebasar v'dam. The Jewish community of the Emirates retains deep ties to other Jewish communities around the world. As word spread about the Year of Tolerance, from the publication of the book Celebrating Tolerance, to the Pope's visit, and ultimately to the announcement of the construction of the Abrahamic Family House, this community and others feels like it is incumbent upon us to become full partners in this vision. It is a gift from all Jews. As Jews, not as citizens representing any other country. The most sacred object in the Jewish tradition is the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. It is our identity, our love, our spirit, our oxygen. Without it, we cannot live.
So I have a question. What do you think they're doing with it? Where do they put it?
John?
Well, so part of the gift is that it's in the possession of the Crown Prince, but the Jewish community is able to retrieve it for use in its high holy days, and so was shared last September for the holy days, and it will be in next month as well. But Eli, maybe you know a little more specificity about where it resides.
At the moment, it is actually in the palace. When the Abraham house is completed, which is expected to happen sometime this year or very early next year, it will be housed in the synagogue of the Abraham house. I will tell you that in a very unexpected way, again, the event of the dedication took place before we ever heard the term Abraham Accords.
Yep.
The signing of the Abraham Accords took place on the lawn of the White House, and I was invited by the ambassador, the Emirati ambassador, to attend. And from there, I and a few others flew to Dubai for Rosh Hashanah on the same day. And that first day of Rosh Hashanah, the Torah was read by me, as I do on a regular basis. On the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the first time it was read was the story of Isaac and Ishmael and Hagar and Sarah. And I felt that it was like really, it could not have been scripted better. But as John mentioned, that this is on loan to us when the Jewish community needs it. Otherwise, they have another Torah, and now several others that have since been dedicated. And then it's returned to Abu Dhabi, where it's housed in the palace.
That is so fascinating and so beautiful. How many Jews are there now in the Emirates or in?
It's a really good question, and no one really knows the exact answer. There are now several congregations that have developed. Yep, 3 in Dubai, 1 in Abu Dhabi. And still we don't know the answer because there are many Jews who are not affiliated. And some who are even now, even post-Abraham Accords, a little hesitant to identify themselves as Jews, and they come very discreetly and they ask for no one to make any contact with them until they get more comfortable. So they're still living in that sense a little bit in the past, because there are now so many overt signs of Jewish life. There's a Jewish school, there are kosher restaurants, there are Jewish travel, flights to and from Israel, kosher food available in every hotel in Abu Dhabi. There's a mikveh in Dubai and a mikveh in Abu Dhabi. So all this has come to life only in the last 2 years.
Wow. How far apart are those two cities?
If you're a New Yorker, it's like New York to Philadelphia, 90 minutes. Drive.
Not bad. And so Tom, when you saw this, did you develop any relationships with any Muslim filmmakers, Jewish filmmakers? Is there kind of a camaraderie there? Did you find, is there a film industry there?
So the answer is yes. One follow-up to Eli, and I'm happy to report that beginning on March 1st, just 8 days ago, Dubai's Emirates airline is showing the film in flight. And yeah, so and they're going to open up new routes to Tel Aviv. But if you're on an Emirates airline flight, you're going to be able to find this film. So when the pandemic started in March of 2020, my team and I felt, contrary to many film productions, around the world, we didn't want to shut down. We felt we were going, like gangbusters. In the spring of 2020, we had never heard of anything called the Abraham Accords, so we didn't know that was coming. So what I ended up doing is using what's called location producers. So because I couldn't travel, I used Muslim, camera people, a Muslim, like a location producer in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. The kind of the original Jewish community going back into the early 2000s, they had already left, but they wanted to be a part of this film. And 6 of them were in London. A couple was in Australia. And so we got those interviews done with the help of local producers and camera people and sound. I needed some footage in Cairo. So I hired a local Muslim filmmaker to just get me 6 seconds of footage that I needed. And he did. In Abu Dhabi, they have a significant, film community. They have a film commission in Abu Dhabi. Image Nation Abu Dhabi does globally first-rate work. They have a collaboration with National Geographic. And so I had no difficulty getting local filmmaking talent on the ground in the UAE. And I'm happy to say that last November of 2021, the film was premiered at the Dubai World Expo.
Wow.
And that was co-hosted by the Israel Pavilion and the US Pavilion.
So I want to ask both of you, that's fantastic. So professionally, you were very accepted, but what's like daily life between Jews, Muslims, and even Christians in the Emirates? Do they stay separate? Do they socialize? Do they go to school together? What's it like there?
I'll take a stab at that, being mindful that neither Tom nor I actually live there. But I have many, many contacts in the Jewish community and elsewhere, many more outside the Jewish community. There's no barrier, no separation. There's no critical mass of Jews that can even live by themselves. So they're all going to school with everyone. And very typically, Emiratis come for Shabbat dinners when the communities are inviting them, and for the Chagim, for the holidays, that first Rosh Hashanah, we had Emiratis praying with us. And the curiosity has grown, as Shakespeare said, as though by increase of appetite. And there are classes being held there. When I brought Federation groups there, they meet young Emiratis who speak Hebrew. So it's a brand new world, and it's one which is filled with love and wonder and imagination, and some disagreements, which are also very healthy. So it's a lot of really good people-to-people interaction.
And also, Susan, I just want to add that the NYU Abu Dhabi campus is made up of 15% Emiratis, 15% Americans, and 70% come from the globe, around the globe. And so that campus is a kind of a center place for ecumenism and, interfaith relations and classmates and a diverse faculty and so on. So NYU Abu Dhabi is kind of a star enterprise in the UAE.
And how do the surrounding Muslim countries feel about the tolerance and openness of the UAE?
Mixed. Very mixed. Yeah, very mixed. I mean, some of them embrace, obviously Bahrain is part of the Abraham Accords, and in that sense, of course, a shared value. But the societies generally are not enthusiastically embracing it. Some are actually overtly critical because they feel that by embracing the Abraham Accords, UAE has abandoned the Palestinian issue, and there's that resentment. And so, there is a sense of we need to demonstrate the success of the Abraham Accords and celebrate it, but also work towards making it even greater and make it a compelling story, not just for the two countries or the few countries involved, but for the region as a whole. And that's really the challenge that we all feel.
So, Tom, you wanted to show like the future, what you think the future is. What's the future of after this year of tolerance and this introduction of these communities to each other? Where do you think we're going? And you have a clip you wanted to show about that.
Yeah, so this is the go away clip for the film. One of the things I try to convey to people is that Sheikh Zayed, the founding father, by nature was a welcoming person. So he welcomed the stranger. So this idea of religious pluralism didn't just show up 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but it's been part of the DNA of the country for 50 years that it's been in existence. And even before, the first Hindu temple was established in 1958. The first Catholic church was like in 1964. So they've had diversity going back decades. And what I try to convey in the film, especially with the coming Abrahamic family house, where there will be a synagogue, a church, and a mosque all on one campus, is that this idea is not static, but it's in journey. It continues to journey forward. And so I think for many people in the Emirates, there's optimism and hope that religious pluralism and ecumenism is here to stay and to blossom. And so maybe with that, we'll just show the last clip.
Yes.
All right.
Wow. Hopefully you won't be buffering for a long time.
Right. Here we go.
Okay.
I think we're part of a grand adventure. And we don't know where it will end. I think we're all coming into it with goodwill and good faith. And our hope is that it leads to great progress, that Jews and Muslims and Christians can live together in peace. It seems like such a small thing. I'm an old man now, I have gray hair, but more important, I not only have children, I have a grandson. And I want to know that my grandson can get along well with his Christian neighbors, with his Muslim neighbors, and live in a country where we respect one another and more than tolerate one another, where we celebrate together. And I think what's going on in the Emirates is a great harbinger for that possibility.
I'm very optimistic about the future of the country. I think that from the days of our founding fathers and the generations before us, they have built so much and have created so much in such a short amount of time. And it's a huge responsibility for us, the newer generation, because with the developing world and the development in technology and all of that, we have to work twice as hard and we have to aim twice as high so that we can continue this journey and continue writing our history as people of the Emirates.
I think that Sheikh Zayed was with us today, and to look down and see where the country is going, he would be proud.
They say, come back in 2 years, come back in 5 years. My God, this is going to be an amazing place.
This is the miracle in the desert, as I call it. This community is the miracle in the desert. It's amazing to me.
I want people to say, you know what? There's a way for us to reopen the door between Jews and Muslims wherever we might be. And that the key that unlocks the door is the Torah. It's so simple.
I work with a generation of youth that has the power to transform our values into verbs. Love is the basis of our faith relationships to Allah, to Yahweh, to God. If He is large enough to contain our world, He is certainly large enough to contain our differences. And in this day and age, personally, I believe that love is what the family of Abraham needs the most. Shabbat Shalom and Salam Alaikum, and may God bless us all.
So beautiful and inspiring. I'm actually choking up when I think about what's going on in Ukraine and Europe. And then to hear this, and the difference, the violence that's happening there and the suffering and the welcome and the vision and the hope of all the members of the community is inspiring and heartening. Absolutely. And I know, Eli, there are lots of tours and people are going to the Emirates, right? A lot of travel there now.
There are not as many as there will be.
There will be. So I just want to thank you so much. And I'm going to open it up in the chat or the Q&A and just see what anybody is saying. Okay, that's just a thank you. And let me see on this side. Again, just thank yous. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Oh, I have a question. So how old is the crown prince? And will he become king? Does he ascend to king, or do you stay at crown prince level?
So the answer to the age question is I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's probably right around 60 years old.
Oh.
His brother, actually his half brother, who is the ruler of Abu Dhabi and also the president of the UAE, both titles, is Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed, shared father, different mother. And yes, the succession is now completely known and pre-ordered. And when Sheikh Khalifa is no longer the president of the country and a ruler of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohamed becomes both the ruler of Abu Dhabi, which is the largest of the 7 Emirates, and effectively the president of the UAE, the federal government.
And how many languages does he speak?
I just know of the 2. I don't know any others. He speaks of course, his native Arabic, and he speaks English. I don't know of any others, so I don't know if there are more.
Tom, do you have anything you want to add or share with us that I didn't ask that might be of interest before I thank you so much for doing this?
No, I am so grateful to a team I had, to Eli, to John Sexton was pivotal to all this. So, I'm a person of faith. So when I think about how this film came about, kind of the challenges we had logistically, the COVID and so on, in my own little mind, I think little minor miracles, made their way and doors opened and things came together. And so when I look at this film, even as I've seen it a zillion times now, I still feel very grateful by all these things that came together to enable it to come to life. And so I could spend another hour just giving you example after example where doors opened all over the world to help get this film done.
Well, it's a gift, I have to say, and an inspiration. And I'm so glad it's going to be on airlines where people from all over the world will see it, than the Emirates airline, which I hear is one of the most luxurious airlines. And it's just, beautiful, and congratulations. And thank you, Eli, for your family's generosity in making this happen. And okay, here's a question. What does Orthodoxy say? So what does Orthodoxy say about giving Torahs to non-Jews? What is that? Is there any comment on that?
Of course, fair question. The Torah, which is obviously the most important gift we have, is actually meant to be used. And so we are dedicating the Torah and giving it to the crown prince so that he will then put it into the synagogue that's being built at the Abraham House in Abu Dhabi. So in that sense, it's going to be used as it was always intended to be used, which is for Jewish purposes.
So it's dedicated to the founding Sheikh of the Emirates, but it will be used by Jews.
And is currently being used.
Currently being used by Jews.
Many times that we've had it since.
Thank you. I'm just going to make sure there's anything else. How can we watch the documentary? Well, it's been on our website for a week, and we will leave it on. So it's still up. You can just go to, the Wilshire Daily or the Wilshire Weekly. And if you scroll down to the announcement, it's still up right now for this program. It says, watch the film here. Oh, and yep. PBS has it available until 2024. It was on PBS too.
Yes. It was shown, broadcast 5 times here in New York, New Jersey, and Long Island in December. At my website, the film website, amenthefilm.com, there's a tab that says PBS, and you can click. Yeah, there it is. So you can click on your website to get it or to my website. And on my website, it'll be there for a long time to come.
Thank you for sharing this film with us and your time with us this evening. We really appreciate it. As again, I said, it's just such a contrast to what's going on right now in another part of the world. So thank you very, very much. And thank you all for joining us.
Yes,
Of course.
a real pleasure.
For the opportunity. Have a good night. Come to the UAE to visit.
Yes, I'm planning to. I definitely want to. Okay.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.